Welcome to History, Facts and Mysteries, your portal into the hidden stories and everyday lives of people who shaped our past. Today, we're stepping back into one of the most fascinating and complex eras of human history, the Middle Ages. Have you ever wondered what it was really like to live in Europe during the medieval period? From the crack of dawn in a humble village to the bustling activity of a crowded market, the daily routine of a medieval citizen was filled with ritual, work, and community. In this episode, we will journey through an entire day in the life of an average medieval European. We'll explore the customs, struggles, and routines that defined everyday existence, revealing the realities behind the myths and legends of the Middle Ages. Whether you're a history enthusiast, a student, or simply curious about how people lived before modern conveniences, this video will provide an immersive look at medieval life. Before we begin, please take a moment to subscribe to History, Facts and Mysteries and click the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Your support helps us continue to unearth the fascinating details of our past. Now, let's step into the world of a medieval citizen and discover what a typical day was really like. Setting the stage: medieval Europe and its society. To understand a day in the life of a medieval citizen, we must first set the scene. Medieval Europe, spanning roughly from the 5th to the 15th century, was a world of stark contrasts, a time when grand castles and towering cathedrals coexisted with humble cottages and muddy streets. Society was highly stratified. At the very top were the nobility and clergy, whose wealth and power dictated much of the cultural and political life. The majority, however, were commoners, peasants, artisans, merchants, and laborers who worked tirelessly to sustain the realm. The social structure was rigid, with one's birth often determining one's destiny. Yet, despite these limitations, medieval society was vibrant and diverse. Local customs, regional dialects, and community traditions varied widely across Europe, from the feudal manors of France to the bustling mercantile hubs in Italy and the rugged villages of northern Europe. Religion, particularly Christianity, permeated every facet of life, influencing everything from art and law to daily rituals and public festivities. Dawn. Waking up in a medieval world. A new day in the Middle Ages began with the gentle light of dawn, not the blaring alarm clocks we know today. Most medieval citizens, regardless of social status, woke naturally with the sunrise. In rural areas, the crowing of roosters and the soft chirping of birds served as nature's own alarm clock. In the crowded streets of a town, the first light would filter through narrow, winding alleys and over-thatched roofs. For many, the first moments of the day were imbued with both practicality and ritual. Before the hustle of daily work began, individuals often engaged in a brief period of quiet reflection or prayer. Households maintained small altars or shrines dedicated to household gods and ancestral spirits, such as the Lares and Peasants in Roman-influenced regions. These early morning devotions were seen as a way to seek protection and blessing for the day ahead, reinforcing the belief that the divine was intertwined with everyday life. Personal hygiene in the early hours was simple yet significant. Even though most people did not have access to running water, a basin of water, often heated by the early sun or drawn from a nearby well, was used to wash the face and hands. This small act of cleansing symbolized not only physical freshness but also a metaphorical washing away of sleep and the remnants of the night. Morning rituals, family life, and religious observances. Family was the bedrock of medieval society. Most households were multi-generational, where grandparents, parents, and children lived under one roof. In the early morning, the family gathered together to perform daily rituals that set the tone for the day. The day often began with a communal prayer or a moment of silent reverence. In many homes, a modest shrine or altar was maintained in a quiet corner. Here, offerings such as bread, small portions of fruit, or a simple libation of wine might be presented to the household's patron spirits. These rituals were not just acts of piety, they served to strengthen family bonds and to remind everyone of their shared history and traditions. After this brief period of spiritual reflection, the family moved on to breakfast. Although the meal was usually modest, consisting of bread, porridge, or perhaps some cheese and fresh fruit, it was a vital moment of connection. Around a low wooden table, family members exchanged greetings and discussed plans for the day. Breakfast. Nutrition and community meals. Breakfast in the Middle Ages, known as the jentaculum in some regions, was a humble but essential meal. For common folk, it typically consisted of coarse bread, often made from barley or rye, accompanied by simple spreads like cheese or honey. In more prosperous households, breakfast might include porridge, eggs, or even a small serving of stewed fruit. Regardless of its simplicity, breakfast was an important ritual. It provided the energy needed for a long day of work, whether that work took place in the fields, workshops, or urban markets. In rural communities, the ingredients were usually locally sourced, fresh from the farm or gathered from nearby orchards. In towns, market stalls provided a modest array of goods, and neighbors would often exchange small portions of food as a gesture of goodwill. Commuting to work. Life on the streets and in the village. Once breakfast was finished, the medieval citizen set out to begin the day's work. In the cities, the streets were narrow, winding, and bustling with activity. Urban centers were filled with vendors, travelers, and the constant murmur of conversation. Cobblestones or packed dirt paths bore the footfalls of people heading to market, to workshops, or to public offices. For those in rural areas, the journey was less about navigating crowded streets and more about the simple act of walking along country lanes. The transition from home to work was often marked by a change in scenery, from the quiet of the household to the lively sounds of the village square or the rhythmic cadence of a rural market. Work and occupation. The varied roles of a medieval citizen. The workday for a medieval citizen was defined by the nature of one's occupation and social status. For the vast majority, peasants, laborers, and craftsmen, the day was consumed by hard, physical labor. Agriculture was the backbone of medieval life, and many citizens spent the majority of their daylight hours working in the fields. Tilling the soil, sowing seeds, tending crops, and harvesting were tasks that required both endurance and a deep connection to the land. The seasonal cycles dictated the work rhythm: spring planting, summer tending, autumn harvesting, and winter resting or engaging in small-scale crafts. Artisans and craftsmen, on the other hand, occupied workshops in towns and cities. Blacksmiths, carpenters, potters, weavers, and leatherworkers were highly valued for their skills. Their workshops were places of innovation and tradition, a space where techniques were passed down through generations. The quality of one's work could define one's reputation and social standing within the community. Merchants, too, played a critical role. They navigated the complex networks of local and long-distance trade, bringing goods from distant regions into local markets. Their days were filled with negotiations, travel along trade routes, and the careful balancing of supply and demand. Even in a world without modern banking, trade provided the economic lifeblood of the medieval city. Lunch, snacks, and the pulse of the market. As midday approached, the pace of the day shifted toward rest and nourishment. The midday meal, or prandium, was typically a lighter affair than dinner but served as a vital pause in the daily labor. For many commoners, lunch might be a simple repast of bread, cheese, and seasonal fruit, often eaten on the go in the busy marketplace or at a communal table in the village square. The market itself was a hub of activity. Here, vendors displayed their wares: fresh produce, dried herbs, meats, and handmade crafts, while townspeople gathered to exchange news, barter goods, and forge social connections. The market was more than just an economic center. It was a social arena where the pulse of the community could be felt in every conversation and transaction. Taverns and small inns provided additional spaces for socializing during lunch. Afternoon activities. Work, leisure, and community life. After the midday break, the afternoon brought a mix of continued work and moments of leisure. For many medieval citizens, the intensity of labor would resume with renewed energy. Field workers returned to their tasks, craftsmen continued their meticulous work in workshops, and merchants resumed their dealings in the busy streets. Yet, not all afternoons were consumed by work. In the urban centers, the afternoon was also a time for leisure and social engagement. Public baths, for instance, were an essential institution in medieval cities, places where citizens could not only cleanse themselves but also engage in conversation, relax, and even exercise. These communal facilities were marvels of engineering, with warm water, steam rooms, and designated areas for rest and recreation. Evening rituals and dinner. A time for family and reflection. As the sun began its descent and the long shadows of the day grew longer, the pace of life in medieval Europe shifted once again. Evening was the time when families reunited, when the hardships of the day were set aside, and when the warmth of home offered solace from the rigors of daily labor. Dinner, known as cena, was the principal meal of the day, particularly for those with the means to enjoy a more varied spread. In rural areas, dinner might consist of a hearty stew made from locally sourced vegetables and meat, accompanied by freshly baked bread. In urban settings, especially among the wealthier classes, dinner was a multi-course affair that showcased not only the abundance of food but also the art of preparation. Elaborate banquets could feature roasted meats, an array of side dishes, and even imported delicacies from distant lands. In every household, the act of dining was a communal event. Family members gathered around a wooden table or, in the homes of the nobility, in a triclinium, a formal dining room where reclining while eating was the norm. Conversations flowed freely as elders recounted stories of the past and parents imparted lessons of virtue and duty to their children. Nighttime amenities, recreation, and preparation for rest. As darkness fell over medieval Europe, the daily bustle gave way to a quieter, more introspective atmosphere. With the absence of modern electric light, households relied on oil lamps, candles, or even the soft glow of firelight to navigate the night. This humble illumination not only provided practical visibility but also created an ambiance that was both comforting and contemplative. Personal hygiene routines, though far less elaborate than modern ones, still played a role in preparing for sleep. A final wash of the face or hands, a change into fresh linen if available, and a quiet moment of reflection were all part of the nightly ritual. Beds, whether simple straw mattresses for the peasantry or more comfortable arrangements for the wealthier, were arranged in communal sleeping quarters or private chambers, ensuring that rest was as valued as the day's work. Reflections on daily life in the Middle Ages. The detailed routines of a medieval citizen, from the first light of dawn to the quiet moments before sleep, reveal a society that was both resilient and deeply interconnected. Life in medieval Europe was characterized by a delicate balance between rigorous labor and rich communal traditions. Every task, every meal, and every ritual served a dual purpose: to sustain the individual and to strengthen the bonds of the community. The challenges of medieval life, harsh working conditions, limited technology, frequent warfare, and periodic famine, were countered by a profound sense of duty and an enduring commitment to tradition. Social institutions such as the church, local guilds, and family structures provided support and continuity in an ever-changing world. The legacy of the Middle Ages is not confined to the grand monuments and epic battles we often hear about. It lives on in the everyday lives of those who labored, loved, and found meaning in a challenging world. The simple acts of rising with the sun, gathering for meals, working the land, and coming together in community paint a vivid picture of a society that, despite its hardships, thrived on order, faith, and a deep sense of belonging. Thank you for joining us on this extensive exploration of medieval daily life. If you enjoyed this video and found it insightful, please subscribe to History Facts and Mysteries and click the bell icon to stay updated on our latest deep dives into the past. Your support helps us continue to bring you engaging and detailed stories that reveal the human experience across time.